was my life like pre-Jesus? I would have to say layered in a lot of different colors of life, a lot of different facets of things going on pretty much since the beginning. I would say that I knew something was unique from a very young age because I was losing a lot of people that I loved from a very young age. However, for my earlier years, I had my grandmother, and she was very centered in God, and through the loss of my loved ones, she would always kind of, I believe, is who planted the seed of Jesus in me from a young age. And so through the loss, I was able to stay strong and stay focused. Unfortunately, it just seems like there was a tremendous amount of loss of loved ones, and including her. So, I remember when I lost her, it was just 10 months after losing my grandfather. And he had a heart transplant, so the doctors had told us he was going to live an easy 25 more years, and he only lived about 10 more months. And about, I would say, 8 of those were in the hospital. So it was really kind of rough on our family because he was the backbone. And this was like, it really seemed like every year there was a death in the family. And so when I kind of lost her, I guess I was in a very vulnerable position. And I was very susceptible to doing wrong things because I felt as if the core and backbone of the goodness and the righteousness was taken, and I didn't have that focus anymore. So I would say that before I really made the decision myself, the conscious decision to give my life to Jesus, I definitely had a lot of loss, and which led me to anger, which led me to fear. And the mixture of those two always led me to overpower the fear with my anger. So I grew up in Southern California, and unfortunately that led me to making really wrong decisions and feeling as if I had justification for the way I was feeling because of the loss that I had. But I do have to say that throughout everything, one thing that stayed with me was the ability to know right from wrong. So almost instantly, every time I would do something unfavorable, most of the time my karma would hit me instantly. And I do believe it's because I did know right from wrong, but I would make the conscious decision to do wrong. And knowing that my grandmother taught me better, and I was just raised better. So it was like a bittersweet thing, a blessing in disguise. But I would say that before making the decision, I experienced a lot of loss, but I was blessed, I guess, with the favor, the grace of God to have strength, because I really would pray for strength throughout the whole way. Yeah, what was the particular moment that made me decide and make the change to really feel as if I wanted to bring Jesus closer into my life? Well, as I was speaking of loss, just about a little over a year ago, I lost my father. Losing my father was a very unique experience, to say the least. If I could tie something in, when I was young, about 5 years old, my father was in a very bad car accident, and he was in a coma and put on life support for about 3 to 4 months. And he was actually pronounced dead on arrival, but when they got him into the ambulance, he had enough brain activity for them to put him on life support and see if they can get him, to survive. So he was in a coma for many months, and he finally came back. And when he came back, he couldn't talk anymore and he couldn't walk anymore, but he was still with us, and there was something in him. We could see that there was still the love and fight. He was there, and we needed to teach him how to speak again, and we needed to teach him how to walk again. So my childhood really was spent of teaching my father how to walk and talk. And so me and my father had a very strong and unique bond, because he barely escaped with his life from this really bad car accident when I was young. But one thing that he always said my entire life, and I think it's important that I say this, is he actually said that he had a conversation with God and my uncle and my aunt. And God said, you need to go back because you have a son and it's not your time yet. And he came back. And I was blessed. I was blessed to spend, a couple more decades with him. And he recently lost his life, transitioned. And that night, I was in a very vulnerable position. But I was really blessed. And I felt the sensation of my father, and he always used to say a phrase to me, and that phrase was, keep the faith. And somebody had told that to him, actually a country singer named Alan Jackson. When he met him after my dad's accident, my grandmother explained the story to him, and Alan Jackson said, keep the faith, David. So my dad was always like, keep the faith. And so this phrase my entire life was just embedded in me, keep the faith, keep the faith. And the night he passed away, I kind of went into my my room, and I was just sitting there, and I felt as if the sensation was put over me that he basically said, Ryan, it's all real. It's all real. It's all true. Keep the faith. And the thing that was the most unique is that I heard his voice, but not in his chopped speech. My father had aphasia, so he would speak in grouped words. But what was really interesting is that he was speaking fluent sentences. In my entire life, I don't remember my father speaking fluent sentences. And it was really kind of hard for me to, it's not like I'm hearing audible voices. This is just a sensation that was put over me. And it was so weird that I remember joking with him and saying, hey, could you kind of like talk to me in the voice that I grew up my whole life? Like, you know what I mean? He said, well, Ryan, the thing is I'm free now. And I'm no longer hurting and in pain. Because I didn't realize that he was in pain every day that he tried to speak, but he couldn't speak fluent sentences. That I can only imagine what that could do to somebody. So to tie in the answer to your question, losing my father is what really led me to say, I need to totally surrender my life to Christ, because he loves me so much that even though through the loss, I'm so grateful along the way for what I do have. And I think that being in his grace because he loves me is great, but being in his grace because I'm doing the right thing, I feel as if that's a better space to be in. It's almost like with your children, you love them so much, you're gonna make sure they're okay no matter what. But when they're well behaved and they're doing the right thing the right way, you wanna do more for them. So I can only imagine what's in store for me when I totally surrender my life to Christ, because just the path that I've been on has been so blessed that I can, like I said, I can literally only imagine what it would be like if I totally just surrendered. And after so much loss, that's really, kind of all I have left, but with that, I have everything. So it's a really kind of unique correlation. But I would say that losing my father is what led me to kind of say, but it was still a process. It wasn't an overnight thing, because I don't want to play around or be not be sincere in my moves, especially when I'm making these moves with Jesus. So the moment that I realized that I was really ready to get baptized was a process. And when the thought initially came into my mind, I knew that I wanted to get baptized, but I knew that I wasn't ready, just to be completely honest. And I didn't know if I should feel ashamed. I didn't know even who to go to speak about it. I didn't know what steps to take. So I did know that I wanted to be baptized, but I just, at the time I said, you know what? I just don't think I'm ready right now. This is something I want to do, but I'm not going to play around with God or with God's time or with anything of that nature. So it kind of was like sitting on my heart for a while. And I noticed that there was just an accumulation of negative energy, you know, that kept compiling. And I'm doing my best to stay focused and stay on the right track and do the right thing and pray hard and keep putting one foot in front of the other. But nevertheless, this negative energy just kept stacking on top of one another right in front of every path and every way I was turning. So really, it was a moment of feeling stripped down to nothing and realizing that as long as I have Jesus in a more tightly knitted way, that there's absolutely nothing that I couldn't face and have the utmost strength and endure and get all the way through it. Whether it be losing my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts, my uncles, my father, upon other things. When you have Jesus, you have everything. And when you're radiant with the love of Jesus, there's no better feeling, you know. And I've just decided that throughout all my wrongs, throughout all my rights, through the lefts, rights, the ups and the downs, it's kind of one of those things where when you have Jesus in your corner, you know, no weapon against you shall prosper. So it was really, I can't necessarily say there was like a thing that happened or an event that happened. There was an accumulation of many events, and maybe for many years, that kind of led me to a point where I said, all right, man, it looks like you might be dealing with things like your whole life, and not in a negative and depressing way, just in a way of these things, it's like a cycle, like a roller coaster. And what better than to have Jesus in your corner? I mean, literally, it gives me chills now just thinking of it. And so it's been a journey, and a journey that I feel as if I'm so close to begin the next chapter of. And it's messes with your nerves, but in a good way. You know what I mean? Because you're not in fear anymore. You're actually excited. And so I'm really excited. And it's been such a unique process, because people have been pulled into this scenario. It's like almost like kind of divine intervention kind of thing. And so the blessings and the miracles and the divine intervention I've seen in my life alone, I have to try to share my testimony specifically for any kids that may have been in or are in certain situations where they're struggling with wanting to get baptized and they don't have the right information. They don't know if I should this, you know, there's so many things that can come into your mind when you're thinking of getting baptized. And, you know, for me, it was a process, and a process that I don't regret, because I feel as if, like I said, I'm at the beginning of the next chapter of a new life. So, yeah.